far. Did you know that data-driven businesses grow 30% more per year than their competitors and are also 6 times more likely to be profitable? And that is a statistic from Lytics.com. So we are going to be looking at how to make marketing decisions from your data. The quote that I have for this lesson is, "We are entering a world in which data may be more important than software." And that is by Tim O'Reilly. We can have the most advanced software that we want, but if the data isn't able to provide us with actionable insights, then unfortunately the software is pretty useless. In the last lesson, we learned about the dark side of social media, and we looked at some examples from big brands of posts gone wrong. We also learned how to develop a social media strategy, as well as how to handle a social media crisis. We learned about social media listening and, of course, how to do it correctly. And then we went through some very avoidable social media fails. Welcome to lesson 7, where we are going to be learning about data-driven social media marketing. In this lesson, you are going to learn about data-driven marketing. You will also learn about the various types of social analytics, the types of social insights that we want to look for when we're looking at our social analytics, as well as some social media metrics maths and how we can use this to our advantage. And then finally, we're going to learn about attribution models. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them into Morpheus, who is our AI chatbot, and you can find that in the bottom lower right-hand corner of your screen. Up until this point, in lesson 6 of module 1, we learnt about the various metrics that we can access on the different social media platforms. We also learnt about any third-party analytics and metrics that we are able to measure. In lesson 3 of module 2, we learned more about analyzing and interpreting that data. And in this lesson, we are going to look at the impact of this data and how you can use it to your advantage. This is where you are right now. Let's take a look at data-driven marketing. In order to truly gauge our social media marketing efforts, we need to turn our gaze to our data. So what is data-driven marketing? Data-driven marketing can be described as the approach to optimizing your brand based on customer data, which helps to predict their needs, desires, as well as future behaviors. Some of the benefits of data-driven social media is that using data at the forefront of our business decisions helps us to personalize the customer experience across their entire journey, as we can see the various touch points that drove them to conversion. We can also improve our targeting of even more well-defined audience segments, as we learned about in lesson 1 of this module. So everything ultimately will come together and each element affects another. Some other benefits of data-driven social media is that it allows you to attract new customers in so many ways. Because your marketing is more targeted, you will attract higher quality leads who are more likely to convert, and therefore you will have more customers, and provided that they are happy customers, they will become brand advocates, spreading the word and therefore attracting new potential customers. From your data, you may also potentially see any untapped markets or niche markets that can be targeted. Living a data-first life also helps you to improve your strategies in real time. As I said in lesson 4 of module 1, your strategy should be a living document. And again, what is one of the top qualities for a social media manager? It's being flexible. And this is exactly why. Because we need to analyze the data that's coming in to see what is working, what isn't working, and then change up our strategy according to what is working and what is driving conversions. Before we start jumping into all this data and taking action, we want to be aware of what we are looking for within our analytics or within our data. So let's look at some of the types of social analytics that we get. First up, we have descriptive analytics, and this is hindsight. It is more reactive in nature, and it focuses on what happened. It is the most common form of analytics, and it generally provides a broad overview of how your campaigns are performing. This helps you to identify the core business problems or the core opportunities available to you. This would be things like your monthly reports, which give you a general idea of where to start looking. Then we have diagnostic analytics, and this provides insight. It's also more reactive in nature, and it allows you to identify the core contributors to successful or failed campaigns. This helps you to filter through broad data sets for very specific information. You can use this information to then improve any of your future campaigns. We also have predictive analytics, and of course, this focuses more on foresight. It is proactive by nature because it allows you to try to predict a future event that can benefit or improve a social media campaign. And this is by analyzing your social media for user intent. So why is the person on your social media in the first place? And then the aim of this is to increase the chances of a favorable response with your content, and it allows you to identify what the influencing factor is for their purchase decision. And last but not least, we have prescriptive analytics. And this is also foresight. It is also proactive by nature, and it provides clarity on how to approach a campaign for the best possible results. It replicates successful campaigns by replicating successful elements of various campaigns. So it tries to prescribe a solution to a specific campaign. Now that we know what we are looking for within our data, we also want to identify the various types of insights that will allow us to take action from the specific data that we gauge from analytics. When you are looking at your data and at your analytics, are you looking for descriptive insights? This is a statement of fact or probability based on the data, and it can help you to identify where you should focus your time, so which channel, as well as what types of messages you want to craft, what content to create, and which existing content you can leverage in order to gain the traction that you need, as well as which customers to target. But if that isn't quite what you're looking for, then are you possibly looking for exploratory insights? This is finding relationships within the data. Do you remember learning about causation versus correlation in lesson 6 of module 1? Let's quickly go over a recap. Causation is the capacity of one variable to influence another, while correlation is a statistical measure that indicates that extent to which two or more variables fluctuate. This is a very good starting point for exploring other connections and then testing your hypothesis. As we learned about in lesson 3 of module 2, where we looked at forming a social media hypothesis and then testing that hypothesis and then applying the results. But if either of these are not making sense to you, or that is not what you are looking for when analyzing your data, it may be that you are looking for more inferential insights. And this is when you use a data set to understand a large group. This would be taking a sample size from customers and then making larger inferences from that data, like we did with our buyer personas. This allows you to draw longer and more detailed conclusions to direct funding and also direct your budget allocation. It also allows you to target the right audiences with the right ads and identify any problem areas that you need to address, as well as understand the customer from a high level overview. A challenge that is often faced by social media managers is showing the value of their social media efforts. But luckily, we have some formulas that we can use to work out what all the work we're doing is worth. Let's do some social media metrics maths. I bet that you chose the social media course because there wasn't any need for maths. Am I right? I am going to fly through these, but they will be available in your summary notes. And if you have any questions, of course, please ask Morpheus, or you may email us on support@shoreacademy.com. First up, we have our audience growth rate, and this measures the speed at which your brand's following is increasing. The equation to work this out is to take your net new followers, divide that by the total audience, and times that by 100. And that will give you your growth rate percentage. Now remember that this is not to work out the number of followers that you are growing at each month. This is to work out the speed at which your brand's following is increasing on a month-to-month basis, or within the required reporting period. So whether it's a quarter or yearly. But preferably you want to measure this month to month. How do we use our audience growth rate? Well, you can evaluate the performance and growth on each of your social media networks, and this allows you to investigate how you can apply your success on those networks to other networks. You can also track your growth rate during the course of a campaign, a product launch, or any other new initiatives to evaluate your success. You can also expand on the right demographic. So pay attention to gender, age, and location of new followers. Some networks will provide this breakdown, but you can also manually investigate it to measure if your strategy is helping your brand reach your target audience. This also allows you to research your competition. Measuring the audience growth rate for your top competitors will highlight what speed is realistic for your industry and help you to determine if you're effectively growing your audience compared with them. And this falls under an awareness metric. So it goes past just shares and likes or followers. Then we have post reach, and post reach measures how many people have seen a post since it went live. In order to measure this, you want to measure your post reach, divide that by your total followers, and times that by 100. And this will give you your post reach percentage. So how do we use our post reach? Post reach allows you to take action because it tells you when your audience is online and also what your audience finds valuable. Post reach is also an awareness metric. Then we have potential reach. And potential reach measures the number of people who could realistically see a post during a reporting period. And in order to work this out, you want to take the total number of mentions, times that by followers of an account that mentioned you, and that equals your theoretical reach. So this is trying to gauge what potential reach you will have with a specific post. Potential reach allows you to be able to gauge your progress. So if you had to work out what the potential reach is on a post and then measure it at the end of the month, you can see how close you were to that estimate or how far away you were. And this allows you to measure your progress. And it's important because you should always work towards expanding your audience. This is also an awareness metric. You are also able to measure social share of voice. And SSOV is the number of people who are mentioning your brand on social media compared with your competitors. In order to work this out, you will take your brand mentions plus your competitor mentions divided by the total mentions, times that by 100. And that will give you your social share of voice percentage. You can use this in order to identify your brand relevancy compared with your competitors. You can also identify direct or indirect mentions, and this is an awareness metric. Then we have applause rate. And the applause rate is the number of approval actions, such as likes or favorites, that a post receives relative to your total number of followers. In order to work this out, you want to take your total approval actions, divide that by your followers, and times it by 100. And that will give you your applause rate percentage. You want to use the applause rate when you want to identify valuable content. It also allows you to inform your content going forward, as you can see what is valuable according to how many saves or favorites you have received. And this is more of an engagement metric because people are engaging with that content. Then we have our average engagement rate. And your average engagement rate measures the number of engagement actions, such as your likes, shares, and comments, that a post receives relative to your total number of followers. In order to work that out, you can take your total engagements, divide it by your total followers, and times that by 100. That will give you your average engagement rate percentage. You would want to measure your average engagement rate percentage because it allows you to prove that your content is resonating with your audience. And of course, it is an engagement metric. So you know what content is working and what content is not, and you can also prove it to your management. Then we have the amplification rate. And the amplification rate measures the ratio of shares per post to the number of overall followers. In order to work this out, you will take your total post shares, divide that by the total followers, and times it by 100, which gives you your amplification rate percentage. The amplification rate is quite important because the higher the amplification rate means that your followers are willing to share your content and also associate themselves with your brand. So remember, they're amplifying it to their followers. And it is also an engagement metric. Then we have virality rate. And the virality rate measures the number of people who shared your post relative to the number of unique views it had during your reporting period. In order to work this out, you want to take your number of shares, divide that by the number of impressions, and times it by 100. And that will give you your virality rate percentage. This is a really, really useful metric to have as it goes beyond just measuring likes or shares. It can pinpoint posts that are far more likely to succeed. So you may have a post that has a lot of shares, but that doesn't mean that the virality rate is going to be high. Whereas there might be a post with a lower likes or lower shares, but the virality rate that you work out is much higher. That means that over the long term, that post is more likely to succeed. And this is also an engagement metric. Then we have our conversion rate, which I know is quite important for a lot of people. And this measures the number of visitors who, after clicking on a post, take action on a page against your total website visitors. And in order to work this out, you want to take your conversions divided by the total clicks and times that by 100. And that gives you your conversion rate percentage. Of course, the conversion rate, and particularly if you have a high conversion rate, it proves that your content is valuable and compelling and that your content keeps its promise. So whatever it's offering, when people land on the landing page to convert, it means that they've gotten what they wanted or what they were told would be on that page, which is a really, really good reflection on your brand. And this is, of course, a conversion metric. Then we have the click-through rate. And the click-through rate measures how often people click on the call to action linked to your post. And in order to work this out, you want to take your total clicks, divide it by your total impressions, and times it by 100. And that gives you your click-through rate percentage. This is important to work out as a metric because it's tied to a link that brings the audience to additional content, and that provides insight into how compelling your offer is, particularly when you look at it in conjunction with your conversion rate. So if you have a high click-through rate but a low conversion rate, It means that the content on the original platform is making people click through, so it is compelling, it's working. But if your conversion rate is low, it means that the page that you are landing on needs to be adjusted. Whereas if you have a low click-through rate, but you see high conversion rates, it means that your content on your original source is not necessarily compelling, but the people who do land on that page are converted. So you need to make relevant adjustments there. And this, of course, again, is a conversion metric. Another useful metric is your cost per click. And your cost per click is the amount you pay per click on your sponsored social media posts. In order to work this out, you want to take your total ad spend and divide that by the total measured clicks times 100. And that will give you your cost per click percentage. This helps you to identify whether your ad spend investment is efficient or whether it's being wasteful. And then you want to adjust your strategy or your content from there. This is also a conversion metric. Following that, we have our cost per 1,000 impressions. And the cost per 1,000 impressions is the amount you pay every time 1,000 people scroll past your sponsored social media content. In order to work this out, you want to take your total ad spend and divide that by your total ad impressions and times that by 100. And this will give you your cost per 1,000 impressions percentage. This is really, really useful, more for when you are split testing content, because it drives impressions and views as opposed to action. Whereas your cost per click tends to drive more action compared with impressions and views. So both of them are extremely useful in different circumstances. It's just knowing when to apply these to the particular circumstance. So cost per 1,000 impressions when you are A/B split testing, and your cost per click when you are driving that specific advert. So of course we'd want to A/B split test first. So maybe use that for your cost per 1,000 impressions. And then when you know which one performs better, then you can use your cost per click to drive that content. And this again is a conversion metric. And last but not least, and I think one of the most important factors that social media managers battle with, is return on investment. And your return on investment measures the value of your social media efforts. And ultimately, that is what we are aiming for. We want our social media efforts to provide value to our company. And in order to work this out, we take the revenue from social divided by our investment. And remember that investment includes employees, ad spend, all of the resources that we put our budget towards, times that by 100, and that gives you your social media ROI, or return on investment percentage. Again, this is extremely important because it identifies whether all of your social media spending and efforts are profitable or whether they are wasteful. And again, this is a conversion metric. Working out all of these additional metrics can help you to demonstrate the value of your work to your stakeholders as well as your managers. It may also allow you to substantiate a bigger budget for your social media marketing. You can also showcase your analytics in story format. So for example, we've done X, Y, and Z, and this is the real world value of what we have done online. And then it allows you to make smarter data-driven decisions as you can gauge what is driving the real value. Are you using any of these metrics at the moment? If so, which ones do you use and how do they help you in your social media marketing? Or alternatively, after seeing some of these metrics, are there any that you saw and thought, I have needed this metric, or I've needed to be able to work this out for ages? And are you going to use any of these useful metrics? Now, we want to try to pinpoint exactly where our users or our followers are converting. And we do this through attribution modeling. There are a few attribution models, but attribution modeling is basically a set of rules that determines how conversions are assigned to various touch points in the customer conversion path. So as you know, we've said that we want to create different types of content for our various customer journey points. And this is where we will look and break it down and see what touch points work better than others in order to try and optimize those touch points to drive more conversions. How exactly do we go about doing this? First up, we have the first touch attribution model, and this identifies the channel that first directed a lead to your brand. Remember that conversions at the end of this funnel would not have been possible without this very first step. It is most effective for top of funnel campaigns, and it helps you to optimize your lead generation process. So we have our first touch, and this is what the first touch attribution model measures. The user, so that might be, for instance, they see a post on Facebook, and that then takes them to a blog post where they fill out a lead creation or lead generation form for more information. And that then drives them to an email that they receive, which is the opportunity creation. And finally, they might then go into your website and purchase your product, and that is your customer close or your conversion. The pros of the first touch attribution model are that it's easy to set up and it requires minimal analysis. It also helps you to identify high performing content as well as adverts. The cons, however, are that it can be prone to error, as this may not actually be the first interaction with your brand that the consumer has had, and it also only emphasizes the start of the journey, which can make it difficult to optimize the full funnel. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the last touch attribution model, and this attributes the entire sales process to the last touch point before the conversion took place. It is the default attribution model for most third-party analytics, such as Google Analytics, and it works best for those focusing on conversion-based metrics, as well as determining which part of your messaging works best. So as we know, we have our first touch point, and that then goes to our lead creation, which drives our user to the opportunity creation. And that is our last touch point prior to the customer close or the conversion. The last touch attribution model, of course, has its pros and its cons. The pros of the last touch attribution model are that it shows you what directs and drives customers to convert, and it's also simple to analyze and understand with no learning curve required. Similar to the first touch attribution, the last touch attribution only focuses on the end of the funnel, which makes it difficult to analyze and optimize your entire funnel. Then we have linear attribution model, and this distributes the value of content touchpoints equally. It is most suitable for small teams with very long sales cycles, so that you can get a good idea of where all the interactions along the journey are, allowing you to fill in the gaps between the first and last touchpoints. So of course, again, we have our first touchpoint, which drives them to maybe they see a post on your social media, and that drives them to a blog post on your website, which then drives them to a product page. And then they want to fill out a form. And while they filled out a form, they may have a sales interaction with one of your staff members, and that creates an opportunity for them to purchase. So they go back to the sales page and they make their purchase, customer close. As always, there are pros and cons to everything, and the linear attribution model, the pros are that you get a more complete overview of the customer journey, but no importance is placed on any particular touch point, and it is easy to set up. The cons, however, are that it doesn't allow you to fully optimize each touch point, because ultimately not every touch point is equal. Some will drive more conversions than others. Then we have the time decay attribution model, and this gives more significance or value to the touch points that are closer to the conversion. It focuses on more of the middle to bottom of the funnel touch points, and this model is ideal for long sales cycles focusing on optimizing what exactly drove the conversion. So if we're looking at our process, we have our first touch, lead creation, opportunity creation, and customer close. So more credit is given to this conversion point, so end to middle, and less credit is given to the first touch point. I'm sure that you can already start to see some of the pros and cons. The pro of this model is that it optimizes the touch points closer to the conversion. However, the con is that depending on the circumstance, the various touch points may have different roles to play. So as we know, the conversion in the end would never have been possible without that first touch point. So optimizing the first touch point can be as important as optimizing the last. We also have the U-shaped attribution model, and this gives credit to three main touch points: 40% to the first and last touch points, and 20% to the middle touch points. This model is best suited to companies with quick, short sales cycles. So we have our first touch point worth 40%, our lead creation worth 20%, and our opportunity creation worth 40%. So here we can see the U-shaped model and the various touch points that it provides value to. And then, of course, our customer close. The pros of the U-shaped model are that it provides equal value to the first and last touch points. Again, as we know, one might be as important as the next. But the con is that the middle touch point may have been the touch point that finalized the consumer's decision to purchase. We do not ultimately know. However, we would be able to know if we used the algorithmic attribution model. And this is ultimately the most accurate way to measure a user's journey. The success rate tends to be higher on this attribution model as it's specifically created for a company individually according to its user journey. It allows an in-depth study of the entire funnel and is most suited to long, complicated sales processes that use marketing qualified and sales qualified leads. Again, with anything, there are pros and cons. The pros of the algorithmic model are that it provides credit to the touch points that matter most. You can start to identify which touch points have more value in driving conversions, allowing you to further optimize and get the most accurate data. The cons, however, are that it is a complex setup. You may require a data analyst or advanced tools to run this method, and it comes with a high price tag. Having looked at all these models, when you're choosing the right attribution model to use for your company, you want to ensure that you align your attribution model with your social media goals. So what is it that you want to achieve? And therefore, what would be most important to measure the value of within your touch point and within your funnel? Identify what is most important to your company, and you can also use multiple attribution models in conjunction with each other. So you can use one attribution model. For instance, you can use the first touch attribution model until you have achieved a specific goal, and then you can move on to another attribution model. So maybe moving on to your last touch point. Or using the U-shape, so you can optimize your first and last touch points and then move on to a linear model where you can see your entire funnel and then start optimizing from that point. In order to track your social media attributions, you can go to your acquisition and overview within your Google Analytics, and then here you can start to get a very good idea of where the majority of your traffic is coming from. If you want to look more closely at your social media attributions, you can go to acquisition, social, and conversions. And from here, we can see the various social media networks as well as the number of conversions that they are driving. So from this point, you obviously then would want to focus on your top social media network that is driving conversions, but you maybe also then want to put a little bit more effort into the content that is going onto the social network that is driving the second most conversions. Or also look at changing your strategy because maybe that is not necessarily working. To get more detailed information, you want to set up goals within your social media, within your Google Analytics. So if you go to admin, goals, and there you want to just add a goal. So you want a goal description. So what is the name of your goal? You want your goal slot ID. Remember that whatever order your goal comes up in, that is the order that Google Analytics will report. And then you can also choose the type of goal. So whether it's a destination URL, whether it is measuring how long or duration of someone being on your website. It can also be pages or screens per session, so how many pages did they visit in their session. And it can also be an event, such as playing a video. Then there are SMART goals, which measure the most engaged visits to your website, and you can automatically turn those visits into goals. I would suggest that if you are not familiar with Google Analytics, that you leave the SMART goal alone and just use the provided URL or destination, duration, page, and event. Then you also want to add a destination, so equals to, you'll just add the URL that you want there or the video. You can insert a monetary value into the conversion. So how much is the value of that specific conversion? And then again, you can just turn your funnel on to specify a path that you expect the traffic to take towards the destination. You can use this to analyze the entrance and exit points that impact your goal. So this is really, really useful. And as always, of course, we have social media attribution tracking tools to help us out. So you can go and check out Octopost. You can also look at Segment, ClickMeter for more information on which of these particular attribution tracking tools you would want to use for your business and which is the most appropriate. Again, consider your budget as well as your team members and what it is you want to achieve. Once you have identified all the various touch points, you then want to calculate the ROI of those touch points so that you can either optimize the content within your funnel or you can completely stop the content that is not contributing towards your conversion.